Gut Yonte von L'chaim, L'chaim. Bruchim Aboim zu der Hisvadus, der spezielle Hisvadus am Merkosi von der Gute City Chabad, ab dem Yom Haboir, Hey Teves, und wie der Rebbe schreibt, das ist der Tag, was bei die dann Notzach le'ene kol ha'amim, als die ganze Welt und die Welt allein hat geschrien, als die dann Notzach, for dem Rebbe, for dem Sifriya, for all the books. I'm going to speak in English because I was just told that it's better to speak in English, so I apologize to all the Yiddish listeners, and I will make my remarks in English. So it's a good Yontif, and welcome to this very special Farbrengen from Agudas City Chabad. On this day, Hey Teves, the Rebbe says that this is the day of the Dan Notzach, Le'enei Kol Ha'amim, with the Pidyon Shvuyim, and Min HaMetzer El HaMerchav. So what I want to start before I go on is to say that on a Yom Segula, we bring a pan to the Rebbe. In Toshin Chav Dalet, in Toshin Chav Gimel, in Shnas HaKan, from Chav Dalet Teves, when the Rebbe Farbrengt, the Rebbe said Yemolt, that Achsidish Farbrengen, das is the Inyan von Ibigem a pan. Achsidish Farbrengen, that is how we give over a pan. So this that we're assembled, at least virtually together, that is a pan. And the yichud that we have, the Rebbe once spoke a siche. It was actually in Tovshin Lamed Ches. So this will be like a shtickle Pesach mit Var Malchus. When the Rebbe Farbrengt Chanukah Tovshin Lamed Ches, there were two Farbrengens. That was the famous year with the Shmini Atzeres incident, and the Rebbe Farbrengt Chanukah Motzei Shabbos, and then Zeis Chanukah was a Suda where the Rebbe washed. And so Gevenke Ein Suda Seido, the Rebbe gave him Keshel Bracha, was a Meredike Farbrengen. And not that we could measure what's a Meredike Farbrengen, but it was a Meredike Farbrengen. And Yemel, the Rebbe said that there's an Achdus that's paled by everybody. Not only the people that are there that are assembled in 770, but people listening all over the world. And even though he said that the voice is a metallic voice that is replicated from the original voice, but since what binds us is the words that the Rebbe is saying, and that it's understood by the Chassidim, that in itself binds them all as one. Even though we're not assembled in one room, but the fact that we're all connected, that in itself, and we're connected for one theme and for one cause, this unites us all as one. Hey Teves, much has been said, and just like by Yutas Kislev, it says that the Rebbe would say that even though people that assembled for the Chag of Yutas Kislev knew the history of Yutas Kislev, but nevertheless, they meticulously reviewed the story. So the same thing is when it comes to Hey Teves. So we have to know that by Hey Teves, it wasn't just that there was a verdict in the favor of the Rebbe, and therefore everybody sang and danced. Those that remember and experience the tension, the tsar, the looking at the Rebbe and seeing the Rebbe in tsar, it had a major effect on each and every one of us. And everyone in Lubavitch at that time was living with a tremendous amount of tension and energy that they wanted to use in the proper way. And there was I wouldn't say there was the fear, but there was the worry. And then when the Mishpat started and the Rebbe went to the Oyel, every day, Yemolt, my father told me that he counted it was over 40 days. My father also told me that the Rebbe fasted on those days. Pashat fasted. So like Moshe Rabbeinu, when he went up to Har Sinai, fasted for 40 days to be able to receive the Gilui Milmaila. The Rebbe fasted here 40 days or more in this Mishpat. So the Tsar was palpable. The metach, the tension was very, very deep. And everybody was angestrengt, as we say in Yiddish, to the maximum. Mele, when Hey Teves came, and the call came that there was a verdict, and the verdict was the Dan Notzach, there was an outburst of Simcha that was a natural outburst from the Etzem and Neshama, and everybody that was in New York ran immediately to 770, and the Shluchim that were in Ari Asada immediately ran to the airport. You dropped everything you did, and you ran to the airport. You wanted to be in the Daled Amos of the Rebbe. And of course, it's indescribable, the Simcha that was experienced in the Daled Amos of the Rebbe by the Chassidim, the Yom Pdus Nafshenu, that it was a true idea. So when it comes to Yomim Ha'elu, Niskanim V'Nasim, we have to remember the Nifla Dikazman, the Chazdei Hashem that the Eibishter showed us with a tremendous victory, and for that we have to say L'chaim, L'chaim. I just want to say a few more things which are negeah to the day, but before we do that, we have a video that's going to be shown and some nigunim, and then we will continue with the Farbrengen.
Der Sefer von Ayid, was lernt in dem Sefer. Allah es wir kamen von Yossi bis Israel, und das ist ein Heilig von seinem Leben. Nicht das ein Heilig von seinem Leben in der Brot, was isst, oder das Wasser, was trinkt. Ein Heilig von seinem Leben ist, wie sagt in Igeres Akedisch, Chai HaTzadik, das nicht, Chai Psorim, das ist Chai im Ruchnim. Also passt auf der alte Rebbe in Igeres Akedisch. Und da ist das gleich auf, aber das meint in Emune und Nave und Jire. Wo lernt wegen Emune? Von wann nimmt die Bonnes von der Emune? Oder Ave wie Jire, wo das verbunden mit Kiem Amitzvus und Schmiedes Amitzvus Leisesse, nimmt das Reis hin, dies vor ihm, in welcher gelernt. Nicht ich bin ein Lawyer, nicht ich will sein ein Lawyer, nicht ich will die Sachen, was ich weiß, nicht das in meiner Linie. Schale in Rambam, aber das ist meine Sache. Chol Materes hat nicht am Teres. Aber das hat ein Scheiches zu mir. Ein Ihnen, was verbunden mit dem Rebbe, ist nicht jeder ein am Meine. Oder ein Ihnen in Igel, oder ein Ihnen von einer Hogeschule. Die Sachen im ganzen Reiche liegen. Ich gehofft, ach, Sie dem, das soll Cholapoche zusammennehmen, wenn Sie das mir versprochen, Sie das echt nicht getan. Ich nicht gewöhnt in Bremen. Er schreit, hat der schwere 35 Jahre in der Mohammed. Und jeder Jahr wird weiter. Ich gehe dort mit zusammen Menschen, die Zeugnis auf mich und Teves. Das ist ein Schecker Gomor. Der Hepech ist Emes und Emes la Amite, als 35 Jahre Amite Schono beschono, wird noch mehr lebendiger und noch mehr starker und noch mehr aktiv zwischen uns und bei uns und durch uns bei jeder und bei allen, bis in der ganzen Welt. Mit darf sehen, der schwer soll bekommen alle seine Chalokim von seinem Leben. Von seinem Leben nicht. Zieht wie liegt in der Sefer oder liegt in der Ksar oder liegt in der Chefes, in der Ruf lebte. Und dem geantwortet der Ruch, also ich stehe bei Yikra Rabbi in Parshas Kedeshim. Soll weggehen zu sich in Stadt. Soll dort zusammenkleiden seine Jiden und sollen sich stellen auf dem Ort, wo der Ruach Tev gefühlt sich und wie es willkommen der Ruach Bilterei. Und sie sollen schreien. Wo sollen sie schreien? Die da Nutzer. Und wie mir sagt, der Chechet in dem Sipur von der Gjule von dem alten Reben, als von den Teinis, was man gehabt zu hören, hat davon gut auch gelernt, wo sie darf sein, der Hisofo, und in was sie darf sein, der Hisofo. Schaß mir will bringen, zu noch aggressere Aliyah, aber das ist der einzige Bild, was wir können finden, Gedea, Dur soll zukommen, kam Pom im Kochen, und noch mehr Schlei Berach, in der Fotos am Majonis Schutzo.
Chaim. Just want to mention one more thing before we hear from the other Farbrengers, that two nukudas that are very important. First of all, the whole gilui of Teves happened in stages. Because when the Teves happened, that was the haschala of the geula. It wasn't a completion. The completion only happened later after the appeal and after the Svarim were brought back. And then when everything was finished in Tov Nun and it was over, so that's when the Rebbe was told that it's all over, it's all finished. And the Rebbe said, Jetzt kemen Zogen Teda. Rabbi once spoke about this, and Rabbi usually would be mishtatef in this Isvadus, and he said, we don't understand what it means. Does it mean that the Rebbe didn't say Teda until now? Of course the Rebbe said Teda. But al pi pashtus, it means that there was something that was impeding the total gilui. B'meila Teves opened up the shar for deeper and greater inyonim to be in his gala. So we don't understand why it took in Shlavim, but that's the way it was. My father actually told me that when the Rebbe got the idea, Rabbi Krinsky had called from the courthouse to the Maskirus, and Rabbi Benjamin Klein got the call that there was a Didan Notzach. My father was in the Rebbe's room, B'Shas Maaseh. And when Rabbi Klein went in to tell the Rebbe the news, so the Rebbe asked, he says, Ken Zain an appeal. And when both Maskirim said yes, the Rebbe said, Yivoseh de Simcha. And we saw B'Peil that the Rebbe wasn't Mekabel de Simcha until later. But yet, in later times, in later Siches, when the Rebbe spoke about Teves, he said that Dosa de Tog was Uvgiton the Pidyon Shvuyim. So even though it was Nisgala later, but the shar for that was Teves. That was Nakuda number one. Nakuda number two that I want to mention is that something that I also heard from my father, that in the early years, mamish in the first years, the Rebbe wanted that the library should officially be given over, transmitted, and transferred to the Balabatishkeit of the Rebbe. And the Rebbe appointed a mishlachas of 3 Elter Chassidim, Ziknei HaChassidim in those days, and he called them in and he told them what he wanted and why it needs to be done. So they began to negotiate with whom they were negotiating at that time. And the answer was, of course, you'll have a part of the library because you're part of the family. We'll give you a key. But there was a refusal to give over the Balabatishkeit. And the Rebbe said to them a very strong lashon. And this lashon actually carried it through the whole Teves spirit. And the Rebbe said the following: as Kol's man der Inyan from the Bibliothek is nish mesuder, felt in them shleimus from the Rabbisteve. In other words, the Rebbe said that Kol's man, as long as the library is not transferred the way it should be, and that the Nesius is given directly to the Rebbe, so there is, so felt, chas v'sholom, we can't even say the words, but there's no, in the shleimus, and as the Rebbe said by the Sichos, das merit menon in the Benkel, this is in the Nesius of the Rebbe. So the Mele, the Kitrug was not only a Kitrug, but it was a Kitrug on the whole Deir Shvi. It was a Kitrug on the Rebbe's Nesius. It was a Kitrug on anything and everything that was shaykh to the Rebbe. So chas v'sholom, to think that it was only about books or about Sfarim, even though it expressed itself through Sfarim, but this was Pashat Kitrug, Saila Maila, Saila Mata, on everything that the Rebbe was doing. And when the Nitzachim came, the Nitzachim was a Nitzachim that the Kitruk was removed and that the Shar opened up. And my father also told me that, by Chassidim, they always spoke about Yutas Kislev as Chag HaChagim. And what does Chag HaChagim mean? That the Chag HaChagim means that it's the Shar for all the Yomim Tevim. So Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and Sukkot and Simchas Torah, and all the Yomim Tevim in the year receive their Chayes through the Chag HaChagim. But now that Hey Teves came, Hey Teves is the Chag HaChagim. So what's Pshat? So he said, for Deir Shishi is Yutes Kislev given the Chag HaChagim, but by uns Deir Shvi, Hey Teves is the Chag HaChagim. So b'meila, we need to realize that when we are assembled on Hey Teves, this is the Shar, this is our Yontif, this is the Yontif of the Deir. The Rebbe doch allemal gemont, als bei die Farbrengen darf doch sein bepeil mamish. Und der Wort, was der Rosh Yeshiva hat jetzt gesagt, als die Ikirism ist nicht gemitzi ist, aber wir da wissen, wie der Rebbe Schatz tun soll und der Keshe, was ist da von Rebben zu uns und zu uns zum Rebben, will ich mamchisch sein mit Asipur. Und das Asipur, was ich gehört etliche Jahre zurück von meinen Taten, ich habe besucht und ich habe gedacht, geben eine Rede, habe ich ihm gefragt, ich habe ihm gebeten, soll man sagen, als Sache, was hat mir noch käme und nicht erzählt. Heinz ist der andere, was weiß in dem Sipur, ob das ist sehr nicht gehe. Das ist ein Sipur, was bringt ist the uniqueness, the yichudei shel Deir Shvi. So because I promised that some of it will be in English, I will do it in English. And I want to take this opportunity also to thank Chabad.org for helping broadcast this. And there were people that asked before if it was going to be in Yiddish and English, and the answer was half and half. So some of it has to be in English. So this is a story that I would like to share that brings out the pale what the Rosh Yeshiva just mentioned before about the Nossi Akel and Akel Hu Anossi, that it expresses itself especially in the Deir Shvi. The story that my father told me was that in Mamish, in the first years of the Nesias, the Rebbe once called him in and began to tell him a story. The story that the Rebbe told him was that he saw once by the Frierdiker Rebbe that the Frierdiker Rebbe opened up his desk drawer. And in his desk drawer, he held a few letters from the people that were very close to him, the Mukuravim, the non-Chassidim. And from time to time, he would take out a letter from one of these Chassidim, be ma'ayin in it, look at it, and close his eyes and think about it, and then he would put it back into the desk. And the Rebbe is telling my father that he was kind of taken aback. The Frierdiker Rebbe is so busy, and these are letters that obviously were read in the past. So why is the Frierdiker Rebbe keeping it in his desk to look at it from time to time? So the Rebbe said that when he looked at the Frierdiker Rebbe with this Pele, the Frierdiker Rebbe said to the Rebbe that he saw the same Hanhoge by his father, the Rebbe Rashab. That the Rebbe Rashab had in his desk drawer some letters of the close Chassidim, and Mizman, he would open up his desk drawer and take out a letter and be ma'ayin in it, and then he would put it back. And the Frierdiker Rebbe too found it that it was a Pele. And the Rebbe Rashab said the following. He said that when he feels that there is a cloud that is hanging over one of his Chassidim, the Chassid himself doesn't know that there's a cloud over him, but the Rebbe feels it. So b'meile, he davens for this Chassid that the cloud should disperse. And he does it by taking out a letter that he wrote once before, and he's ma'ayin in his name and his mother's name, and he's mispal on his behalf. And the Frierdiker Rebbe indicated that he does the same. So my father was waiting for the punchline, so the Rebbe finished. Therefore, the Rebbe said he wanted that from every letter that was sent to the Rebbe, that my father should make index cards and write down the name of the writer that wrote the pan or wrote the letter with their mother's name. And in a family, it should be all the members of the family. And it should be alphabetized. And the index cards, so the younger generation doesn't know what an index card is because everything is electronic. but they were in these envelopes that had a track and they had cards in it, and they were arranged according to the alphabet. And the Rebbe said, when it fills up, you will find another box and make more cards and more cards. And Mizman, they added cards. And what was the pshat from the roof? Alpi Pashtus. The pshat was that when the Rebbe had these names by him from anyone that wrote to him, he would feel that there was inyam, was daf havna tefillah, if there was a cloud, that he would be ma'ayin in the name. But what was interesting is that there is something unique about the Deir HaShvi. The uniqueness of the Deir HaShvi is the connection that was obvious and clear to each one of the Rebbe's Chassidim, everybody in the generation. It wasn't just the letters of the Mukaravim that the Rebbe had in his desk drawer, but it was everyone or anyone that reached out to the Rebbe. And that personifies the inyan of Nasi o Akoil, V'Akoil o Anasi, a shaykhis that the Rebbe had to each and every one. And the question is why? So the Rebbe answers it in the first Maimer of Basi Lagani, that this is something that the Rebbe was meshatef the entire generation. Why, we don't know. There's the famous sikha that the Rebbe spoke, Purim Toshim Mem Zayin, B'negei, the inyan of bringing Mashiach, why it was given over to everybody. This is something that's beyond our understanding. The Rebbe said, Yamot Oloshim Yuridus Adedes. But nevertheless, this is the uniqueness of the Deir HaShvi. I have another idea that I spoke to my father about, because we remember that the Rebbe was Makabel Chassidim and Stam Yidden on Yechidus. And the Rebbe would have Yechidus in the early days 3 nights a week. Then later it became twice a week. And then in Tov Shalamed Hey, the Rebbe said that the Yechidus for Yom Yoledes is bottled. And there were common reasons for it. And Shabbos Bereishis, the Rebbe gave them almost a very big bracha and was killed everybody in the bracha. The only ones that were able to go into Yechidus were Orchim, or special occasions. And then even after that, that stopped and it became Yechidus Kloli. Some people, when they wrote to the Rebbe that they want to have a Yechidus with the Rebbe would answer, Mistam Neg, Kikama v'kama ma'anash la'achreino shenichnosim li'yechidus be'esa yisvadus, that Mistame, he's conducting himself like many of Anash in recent years, that they enter into Yechidus during the Farbrengen. But then in Tovshin Memvov, the Rebbe started a new inyan, and that was to give out first with nickels and then with dollars. And the Rebbe would be mekabel ponim of every person that wanted to come to the Rebbe. And the Rebbe said several times that he's making them as a shliach mitzvah l'tzedakah. But the point is that the Rebbe was makabel ponim every yid, the saver ponim yofis. And you saw a difference between Sunday to the rest of the days of the week. If the Rebbe would give out dollars, and other times it was very, very quick. The Rebbe once spoke a sicha on Yud Beis Sivan why Sunday was different. It was the union of Chesed. But over there, Shtaltzach the Shaila Echad. The Rebbe was so busy. I remember one time there was a yid that wanted to go into Yechidus. The Rebbe was davening upstairs in the Zal. And he went to the mosquitoes to ask for Yechidus, and they said there's no Yechidus. And they told him to write a letter. So he was very bold, and he went into the Zal for Mincha, and right after Mincha, he walked over to the Rebbe, and he said to the Rebbe that he would like to have a private Yechidus with the Rebbe. And the Rebbe turned around to him, and he pointed at all the people in the shul, and he said, so would he, so would he, so would he. Everyone wants to have a private moment with the Rebbe, wants to have a private moment, but it's not possible today. So therefore, you should go into the mosquitoes, into the secretariat, and you should write your letter. So we know how busy the Rebbe was. And here, all of a sudden, on Sundays, the Rebbe was greeting everybody. Now, not that I'm the Versteher, none of us can understand the Rebbe's minhagim, the Rebbe, why the Rebbe did it. But one thing we see from this, that the Rebbe was makabel panim, every yid, and every person that came to save upon him the office, young and old, men, women, and children. And l'cheira, one of the things was that the Rebbe was empowering the entire generation, that everybody is part of the Rebbe's army. There are those that are designated as shluchim and have the special segula of being shluchim and the minui of being shluchim. But then again, everybody could be part of the Rebbe's army. Everybody is part of the Deir HaShvi. So the inyan of Nasi o Akel is that the Rebbe had a relationship with everybody in his generation. And B'meila, when it comes to Teves, which Hey Teves is the yontif of the Chag HaPdus, and it's a pidyon shvuyim, and it's minametzer al merchav. This is a yontif for all of us, for the entire generation, and it's megala the etzem inyan of Deira Shvi, that the Deira Shvi should have in its sochem. So the man, I want to say l'chaim